All right, we are getting deep into transition time at this point. It is time to start transitioning the gardens over. So we just got out of a heat wave. It was roughly in the mid 90s to upper 90s in the day. Now today we're in like the high 80s, which doesn't seem like much, but in plant world, it's a big difference. I didn't even check on these after I put them up. There was nothing else I could do. So we're gonna check on our Brussels sprouts. We're gonna plant another row of hybrid Brussels sprouts and see if there anything needs to be replaced, because I got a feeling there will be. And then I wanna go around and see the effect the heat had on parts of my garden and just kind of see what we can do differently next time. Well, it's ugly as hell, but it works, I'll tell you that much. And I mean, you can see underneath here how we're doing. It looks like we got a little bit more pressure from the pests, so we do need to spray again. And like this one right here, you can see clearly they've gone to town on it, which is sad, but we can easily replace that as well. You know, the problem I've been having is I'll come out here in the evenings and I'll check the radar and it'll be like, boom, it's gonna rain. And it's like I can't spray. So that's been the ongoing saga of this year for my garden, is like we're getting these like 2-minute rain showers every night, and then I'll wake up in the middle of the night and it'll rain again. So I don't really want to spray and waste it. So it's just kind of, you know, working against it. But it does look like the heat actually, you know, underneath this little shade cloth deal, it did pretty well. I did have to come out here. We've had some windy days as the temperatures have been changing. So I have had to come out here, and believe it or not, the thing that I wrapped around to hold it tight did blow it off. But I am going to use this moving forward. I think this is a much better method than setting up like this huge structure all over my garden. So there was a point when I was so fed up with it a couple of years ago, I legit thought, let me see if I can get a wide enough shot. I was gonna put a post on all 4 sides and then just string up a massive shade cloth. And to be honest, that would have been a true nightmare. I can't think of anything worse to do, as a matter of fact. So I'm glad I didn't do that. And this has worked out well because I can target each bed individually. Because as we'll see going around in a little bit, the heat actually, some plants did just fine and there's no need to give them shade. If you guys don't have this, I'm going to tell you every time, this is the best hoe ever, especially if you like planting in a furrow, which I've done exclusively this year, and I completely am in love with it. It is a way better method for me. Allows me to get plenty of fertilizer in, and it also helps me turn up the garden just a little bit in those areas where the roots are really going to grow. And I feel like it gives them time to kind of stretch out and really do their thing. Because I value mulch so much, I just pulled it back a little bit. Put it right here, I'll get it back to it. And then a pre-planting fertilizer. I'm here to tell y'all, pre-planting fertilizer is the best thing since sliced bread. You put it in, the roots aren't really ready to accept it yet, and it's not gonna break down, especially if it's already organic, so it takes a while for it to break down. By the time those roots start spreading, that fertilizer starts to kick in, and then you're ready to go. So always add a pre-planting fertilizer. That's like my #1 rule. It really does help, because let's face it, this time of year, if you're anything like me, you're starting to get a little tired, and you may more than likely forget to come back, especially if you have a bigger garden, and fertilize all these areas. So it kind of gives you that buffer. So that's all I got to say about that. Now, this one, if I could have, I would have used like a biotone, a higher nitrogen, but I didn't have any, so I just used like a basic 10-10-10 fertilizer. It's going to be just fine. I ran out of blood meal. It's going to be just fine. What I'll do is I'll go get some, and I'll come back and I'll just fertilize this whole bed with the blood meal, just to give it that extra nitrogen to keep it going. But when you're planting stuff that's like fall crops that really need to stay a little bit cooler, we want to be very careful at first, especially in this heat, how we push that nitrogen to it, because we don't want to push extra growth that's going to get burned. And if we do, we want to protect it, which is where this shade cloth that I put up really helps. So just make sure that you are aware of that. You don't want to push too much growth. So there's a little bit of a balancing act that happens, and we just want to walk that tightrope as much as possible. As soon as the temperatures start letting up, you can go back to it. Like I know this week it's going to be in the mid to upper 80s and low 90s, but then next weekend it's going to go back up into the upper 90s again. So I already know that I need to keep my eye on this. Okay, so here's a testament to one of the methods, or the reason why I use this method, should I say, is, you know, we're succession planting. So what we've done here is we did the back row, waited a couple weeks, did the middle row, waited a couple weeks, and then we did the front row. But each time we do it, we have the ability to go back and say, hey, is there anything that needs to be replaced? Now look, I know it's gonna mess up the whole succession planting deal and all that stuff, and that's okay. I'm not overly concerned about that. What I'm concerned about is having the plants in there. So I can take this time now to kind of go through and say, hey, let's replace it. But there's a couple caveats with this particular situation. When the back row here is all heirloom. Now the problem is I started a 6-pack of heirlooms. So I've really got to go through, and if there's any that needs to be replaced, it's going to be a hybrid. So I really want to stick, you know, try and keep as many as possible back there. But like this guy right here that's just been chewed all to hell, he ain't gonna make it. So we're gonna go ahead and replace that one with a hybrid. These 3 should be okay. There's one under here that's a little chewed up, but it'll be all right. And this one here was actually already a hybrid, so I'm just gonna go ahead and swap it out because I have a whole tray. I have plenty. And then if we go down this row here, I skipped one. So I'm gonna go ahead and just add the exact same variety because I have extras in here, and then that'll finish out that row. Because I mean, in a perfect world, yes, you would love to have everything going exact. I'd love to have the back row first, and the middle row, then the front row. But that's not how it's gonna work. I can go ahead and tell you that now. I don't care if there's 1 or 2 left in the back row that have to grow. What I care about more is that I get the poundage that I had estimated in a previous video. And what that was basically is the average was 2 to 8 pounds, I think it was. This is all off the top of my head now, it's not fresh anymore. It was like 2 to 8 pounds per plant. Cut that in half. 2 to 4, happy medium, 3 pounds. So we're hoping that if we do this correctly, we can get 3 pounds of Brussels sprouts per plant. Probably a high ask, whatever. I'm not going to overly concern myself about that, but what I am going to concern myself about is that we actually get that harvest. Don't give a crap when it happens. It can happen now, or it can happen in February. Anywhere in between, I'm cool with it, but we just got to make sure we get this stuff planted. All right, so I did some light adjustments to my thing here, and I'll show you what I did. All I did is I just piggybacked onto this trellis right here, or this tomato cage, and I tied a double slip hitch, half hitch, a double slip half hitch. So basically all I have to do is just pull this and then the tag end right here, and the whole knot will come loose, and then I can just pull this down really quick. And so the reason why I'd want to do something like that is if we get like a storm coming, hurricane or anything, I don't have to come out here and mess with it. And more importantly, I don't have to cut that string. I'm okay with cutting it. It's not a big deal, but it's just a little bit wasteful. Another 2 seconds and you can just have to avoid that. But this is what it's doing right now, and I do like this even better. So this is going to be a constant evolving situation here, and especially the next one I do will be totally different because I don't have this in front. What's happening is, even though I had the hang down, this front row was just still getting full sun, and so now it's all getting a reprieve from the heat. So between the shade cloth, the mulch, and the watering, the soil temperature should be about 15 degrees less, roughly. And then the leaf temperature, you know, as you can see, this will give it probably, I would say, let's be conservative, about 5 degrees. And then the light colored mulch, because it's not dark and the heat's not bouncing up, should give it another couple degrees less than what it would have been. So this should all help. We'll see how that works. You never know. But I do want to just take a quick glance around the garden and really look and see what struggled with and without the heat. My tomatoes have done absolutely fine. They have continued to put on fruit the whole time. As you can see, we're starting to get loaded down. So we are about a couple weeks off from really starting to get a lot of red tomatoes off here. So the second crop should come in fine. The important thing to remember about these are Virginia Select Roma tomatoes. So they're used to the southeast heat. So we clearly can see that in these. I mean, we had high temperatures and they didn't even get bothered, which is good. No fruit drop or anything like that. So I'm extremely happy with that. Our sweet potatoes, without a doubt, they held up just fine. No real issues. It looks like we're getting a little bit of damage, but to be honest, I always see this on all of my sweet potatoes, and I don't know. They're coming out probably about 8 feet from the bed now, so they're going out super far. These, without a doubt, did just fine. These are black-eyed peas, so they have done no problems whatsoever. They have continuously started to set beans on them. As you can see, now these will just let dry on here, but they're just going to continue all the way from now until the end of summer. These will continuously set up beans, and that's why we're going to continue to grow them year after year, because it's just a non-stop producer in the heat. This is a Seminole pumpkin. This one is not doing too bad. It's not setting any fruit or flowers, but again, it's bred for Florida heat, hence the name Seminole. But it seems to be doing very well, and we just take and retrain this every once in a while, put it back on. It is doing splendid, if I may say so. So we're gonna keep that going, see if we can ever get anything off of it. Haven't seen any blooms yet. Something that's not doing too good is this Mater right here. This is an Honest Abe tomato. It's an indeterminate, and I've gotten 4 tomatoes off of it. Not super impressed. Will not be in my repertoire for next year, no matter what. It's struggling at this point. We're gonna try and give it some juice and get it up and going, but we'll just have to see how it goes. Now, these cucumbers here, they seem to be handling the heat just okay, but they're not thriving in it. So other than the usual disease that attacks, we're getting a fair amount of this, which is just the fruits that aren't, I don't know if they're not pollinated well, or if it's the heat. One of you guys might be able to tell me, but we're getting a fair amount of that. So I've been coming out and just pulling them periodically. If they don't do well, fine. If they do, fine. But they seem to be doing okay. I think the heat's just getting them. So as we get a reprieve from the heat, we should see production kick up. Now, I will say this. I totally missed this the other day. This is not going to help our production at all. So we're going to keep this, and we're going to save this seed. And yeah, it killed off this part of the vine. So you can see that kind of set us back. But for the most part, everything on here is doing okay. Another squash beetle on it though. That's a whole different story. Now I will say this, there he is, he's gone now. We had an abnormal amount of pressure on it. We had pickle worms at one point, gave it a treatment. We've had squash beetles all over it, stink bugs, and we've been treating for them. But again, with that little bit of rain that we're getting, it just makes it really hard. So all I can say when you're in a situation like that is just do the best you can and just spray it when you get a chance and just try and stay on top of it. You may have to extend your treatments, but whatever. I'm not gonna get freaked out about it. We've gotten plenty of cucumbers. I'd like to keep it producing for a while though, because the plan was that next tomato crop over there was going to be our salsa crop. So for my recipe, I do need cucumbers for it. So I'd like to keep them producing as long as possible. Stellar, absolutely stellar ground cherry year. Doesn't look like much, but they are loaded. They're all falling on the ground. My son's been coming out every other day and getting them by the handful. So that's good. We're finally getting enough where we can get them inside and not eat them all before we come back into the house. This geranium kiss tomato is done pretty well. It's an indeterminate, and you guys know how I feel about those, but it's producing. We're just gonna let it go. It fell during a storm, but I'm just gonna let it see how long it'll go for. And we've got some volunteer tomatoes here. Just gonna let those go and see what it is. My guess would be it's aroma, so whatever. We're just gonna live our best life, you know what I mean? If we come over here to the wild garden, So everything's been doing fairly well here. And not to my, I'm not surprised by the fact that the peppers are doing okay. So the peppers are all still green. We do need to feed them. They will get fed. They are starting to look a little yellow, but I think that's a combination of heat and then just that time of year. My son's bed, we actually did end up leaving the lima beans in them because I just wanted to see what they would do. And we are starting to get lima beans on them. So we're just gonna let these ride for a while and see. The tomatoes back here, they're done. We've got like 4 more we're gonna get and then pull those up, and the corn is done. So with this heat that we're having this year, which has been excessive, it's been going on for about 2 weeks. We're gonna get about a week break, if you can call it that, and then we're gonna get right back into it. My question is, do you think this is the future of gardening? I'm not a big climate change person, man-made climate change person. I'm more of a combo type of deal. I believe it's cyclical, and I also believe that it's man-made. So I think we've made it worse, but I don't think we've caused it. But that being said, I could see myself doing stuff like this more and more in the future, because as we look around at these beds, and I'll show you what we're going to be changing and where things are going, I can see that we're going to have to do a lot more of heat mitigation throughout the next month or so. This bed, it's got about another month left for the sweet potatoes, maybe less. The bed behind it is empty at this point. We're going to be putting cabbages in that. This bed, once these tomatoes even start to begin to look like the other ones, we're going to pull those up. That'll probably be a broccoli bed more than likely. This bed over here, this garden is a little bit tricky. It is the wild garden and it's supposed to be like this, so we don't want to go too crazy with it, but the corn bed is obviously going to be done. We'll pull everything up, and I'm not totally sure what I'm going to put in its place, but we're going to put something there. And then the tomatoes will be coming up in the next week probably, so we'll be putting something there. These peppers, now these will stay for a while, and that's kind of poses a little bit of an issue. Ooh, my camera got too hot and cut off. But what I was saying is the bulk of our harvest actually comes from September into beginning of October roughly. So we're real hesitant to pull it up, which means whatever goes behind it needs to be a really fast grower. It kind of is what it is. So we'll see what happens. But if you guys are having it, let us know in the comments below what you think about the future of gardening looks like, if you think it's going to be heat management like this, just widespread, or what, because it's been really hot here, and I know some other places have been struggling. So I'm thinking about y'all's gardens, and I hope everybody's doing good.